The old two-story house in the residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan looked like a typical middle-class home from the outside. However, Jennifer Wilson's heart grew heavy as usual when she crossed the threshold. Holding her 10-year-old daughter Emma's small hand, she was visiting her family home to help prepare for Thanksgiving. "Mama, Grandma is nice, isn't she?" Emma whispered softly. "Yes, Grandma Dorothy is truly kind," Jennifer answered, stroking her daughter's head. "But be careful around the others. No matter what they say to you, don't forget that you're a wonderful child." Jennifer worked as a graphic designer at a small advertising company. After her divorce, she had struggled to build a life with just her and her daughter, but every visit to her family home reminded her of the family hierarchy that had persisted since childhood. In the living room, her mother Linda was preparing Thanksgiving table decorations. When she saw Jennifer, a cold smile appeared on her face. "Oh, you're finally here. You're late," Linda's voice was filled with obvious displeasure. "Ashley has been helping for 2 hours already." "Sorry, Mom. Work ran late," Jennifer apologized, though she had actually arrived well before the agreed-upon time. From the kitchen came the shrill laughter of her sister Ashley. Since marrying a wealthy husband, she had become increasingly arrogant. When Ashley saw her sister, she waved dramatically. "You came alone again, I see." Still having bad luck with men, Ashley's words dripped with malice. Jennifer said nothing and gently squeezed Emma's hand. She had no choice but to endure it as always, to protect her daughter from being hurt. "Hello, Emma dear," a gentle voice echoed from upstairs. Grandmother Dorothy was slowly coming down the stairs. As a former teacher, she was the only one who showed genuine love to Jennifer and Emma among all the grandchildren. "Grandma." Emma ran to her grandmother and was gently embraced. "Emma dear, you've grown so much. How is school?" Dorothy's eyes were filled with warmth as she looked at her granddaughter. "It's really fun. I've gotten good at drawing," Emma answered happily. "That's wonderful. You have artistic talent like your mother." Dorothy also gave Jennifer a warm smile. Linda interrupted the conversation with a raised voice. "Jennifer, save the chit-chat for later and help in the kitchen. Thanksgiving preparations are a lot of work. Emma, you come too. Children need to learn to work." "But Mom, Emma is only 10, Jennifer tried to protest. "I don't want to hear excuses. In our day, we helped with housework from a much younger age," Linda's voice was stern. "Besides, you two are freeloaders here, so it's only natural." Ashley added, "That's right. My children are at their father's family today so they can't help, but Emma is here, so she can work." Jennifer gritted her teeth. They were certainly not freeloaders, they were invited every year for Thanksgiving. However, in this house, they were always treated as bottom of the hierarchy. Dorothy spoke quietly. "Linda, don't be too harsh. Jennifer and Emma are guests." "Mother, you're being too soft," Linda stared at Dorothy. "This child needs to learn reality." Jennifer placed her hand on Emma's shoulder. "It's okay, Emma. Let's help." In the kitchen, the turkey was already roasting in the oven, and preparations for various side dishes were underway. However, Jennifer and Emma were given the most troublesome tasks, washing dishes and cleaning floors. Ashley only handled the easy work, and Linda just gave orders. "Jennifer, that's not how you wash dishes. Clean them properly." Linda's criticism was relentless. Meanwhile, Dorothy quietly watched over Jennifer and the others. Her eyes held deep sadness and the light of some kind of resolve. The grandmother occasionally spoke gently to Emma, encouraging her tired granddaughter. As the afternoon passed, relatives began arriving one by one. However, only Jennifer and Emma were forced to continue working. The other family members chatted and relaxed while watching TV. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving dinner, Dorothy came to Jennifer's side and whispered softly. Everything will change, I'm sure. Jennifer couldn't understand the meaning of her grandmother's words, but the light of determination in her eyes made her sense that something special was going to happen. Thanksgiving morning began in the still dim hours of 5 a.m. Jennifer woke up on the sofa bed in the guest room, but could already hear sounds from the kitchen. She got up quietly, careful not to wake Emma, who was sleeping beside her. Going downstairs, Linda was already wearing an apron and preparing the turkey. Her expression was tense from early morning, and her obsession with a perfect Thanksgiving dinner showed on her face. "Oh, you're finally up," Linda said without turning around. "Ashley has been here helping for an hour already. You need to hurry and help too." In reality, Ashley was just sitting in the corner of the kitchen drinking coffee and looking at her smartphone. When she saw Jennifer, she stood up dramatically. "Good morning. I've already finished preparing the mashed potatoes, so you can take over from here?" Ashley was lying. The potatoes for mashed potatoes hadn't even been peeled yet. "I understand," Jennifer silently began working. From years of experience, she knew that arguing was useless. After a while, Emma came downstairs. Still rubbing her sleepy eyes, she snuggled up to her mother's side. "Good morning, Mama." "Good morning, Emma. Did you sleep well?" Jennifer answered while peeling potatoes. "Emma, you help too," Linda commanded. "Take the tablecloth out of the washing machine and iron it." "But Grandma, Emma is still a child. Isn't ironing dangerous?" Jennifer said worriedly. "You're being too soft. A 10-year-old can certainly do it. In our day, we did housework from a much earlier age." Linda's voice was cold. Ashley added insult to injury. "That's right. My children have been helping since they were much younger. We can't give Emma special treatment." Emma looked up at her mother with an anxious expression. Jennifer gently stroked her daughter's head. "It's okay, Emma. Mama will help you." "No, Jennifer. You focus on cooking. Emma will do it alone. She needs to learn independence." Linda's tone brooked no argument. Emma nodded quietly and headed to the laundry room. Jennifer's heart ached with worry, but she knew that opposing her mother would result in even harsher treatment. Around 9 o'clock, Dorothy came downstairs. She looked around the kitchen and noticed Emma struggling with the ironing board. "Emma dear, are you okay?" Dorothy asked gently. "Grandma, this tablecloth is so big and heavy," Emma answered with a troubled expression. "Let me help you." Dorothy stood beside Emma. "Mother, don't spoil her," Linda interjected. "This child must do it alone." Dorothy looked at her daughter. "Linda, I used to help you when you were little too. Family members should help each other. Times are different. Today's children are too spoiled," Linda stubbornly insisted. Just then, the doorbell rang. The relatives invited to Thanksgiving dinner began arriving one by one. Linda's brother Robert and his wife Margaret, and their son David with his family. Linda's sister Susan and her husband Michael. A total of 15 family members were expected to gather. As soon as the relatives arrived, they began relaxing in the living room. The men watched football on TV, and the women chatted about recent events. However, only Jennifer and Emma were forced to continue working in the kitchen. "Jennifer, what's happening with the cranberry sauce?" Linda pressed. "It'll be ready soon," Jennifer answered, wiping sweat from her brow. "You're slow. Ashley would have finished it long ago." Linda's comparisons were merciless. Ashley was chatting with the relatives. "My sister Jennifer has always been inefficient. Ever since we were children, she was always being scolded by Mother. The relatives laughed. But that laughter pierced Jennifer's heart like needles. Dorothy quietly stood up and headed to the kitchen. Jennifer, take a little break. I'll take over. No, Grandma, I'm fine, Jennifer declined politely. Don't be modest. You've been working since morning, Dorothy's voice was filled with deep affection. Linda interrupted. Mother, Jennifer is just fulfilling her share of work. She doesn't need a break. Linda, you're too harsh with your daughter, Dorothy said in an unusually strong tone. I'm just teaching her reality. The world isn't kind, Linda answered stubbornly. Dinner preparations entered the final stage. As the magnificent Thanksgiving dishes were completed one by one, Jennifer and Emma continued washing dishes and cleaning until the very end. Emma, are you tired? Jennifer whispered softly to her daughter. I'm okay, Mama. Grandma is watching over us, Emma showed trust in her grandmother despite her tired expression. Dorothy stood quietly in the corner of the kitchen, watching Jennifer and Emma. In her hand was a small recording device. She had been recording all the unreasonable treatment since that morning. Everyone, it's almost time for dinner, Linda called out loudly. The relatives headed to the dining room one by one. On the beautifully set table were magnificent dishes completed through Jennifer and Emma's efforts. However, those two contributors were only allowed to take their seats after finishing the kitchen cleanup. This looks like it's going to be a truly wonderful Thanksgiving dinner, Uncle Robert said with satisfaction. Yes, thanks to Ashley helping since early morning, Linda praised her daughter. Ashley smiled proudly. Thank you, Mother. It's only natural to serve family. Jennifer said nothing. She knew that even if she told the truth, no one would believe her. However, Dorothy had seen everything. The dining room was filled with 15 family members gathered around a beautifully set table. On the white tablecloth were linen napkins that Emma had carefully ironed, and gold-rimmed plates gleamed. In the center sat a golden brown turkey in all its glory, surrounded by traditional Thanksgiving dishes, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and stuffing. Linda maintained her dignity as hostess while introducing the dishes to guests. We've prepared another wonderful Thanksgiving dinner this year. Thanks to Ashley helping since early morning. The relatives exclaimed in admiration. It really is magnificent, Linda, Aunt Margaret praised. Ashley is such a good daughter. Ashley pretended to be modest while actually beaming with pride. It's for family. It's only natural to help Mother. Jennifer and Emma were seated at the very corner of the table. While the other family members sat in comfortable chairs, only these two were given old folding chairs. However, they had no intention of complaining. From years of experience, they knew that protesting would result in even more humiliating treatment. Now, let us offer our prayer of thanksgiving, Uncle Robert solemnly clasped his hands. Everyone bowed their heads and recited the traditional Thanksgiving prayer. When the prayer ended, Linda began carving the turkey. Large, fine pieces of meat were served onto plates one by one. However, when it came to Jennifer and Emma's plates, they received only the bony end pieces with little meat. This should be enough for Sister and Emma, Ashley said coldly. Overeating isn't good for you. The other relatives said nothing. They tacitly understood and accepted this family hierarchy. Or perhaps they didn't want to get involved. Once all the food was distributed, Linda began taking cutlery from the cabinet. Gleaming silver knives and forks were distributed to each person. However, when she reached Jennifer and Emma, Linda's hand stopped. Oh my, we're short on knives, Linda smiled maliciously. I guess it can't be helped. Every other seat had knives and forks, but only forks were placed in front of Jennifer and Emma. The two looked at each other with confused expressions. Mom, we can't cut the meat without knives, Jennifer said hesitantly. Linda smiled coldly as she answered. You can bite it off with your teeth. That's how people used to do it. An uncomfortable silence fell over the entire dining room. However, Ashley broke that silence. That's right, it's perfect for savages, her voice was filled with obvious mockery. Even dogs and cats eat meat with their teeth. Chuckles leaked from among the relatives. No one tried to defend the two. Jennifer's face reddened with humiliation, but she endured it thinking of Emma. However, Emma was a 10-year-old child. The cold stares and laughter from the adults around her deeply wounded her heart. She shrank into herself and looked down. Her small shoulders could be seen trembling. Emma, it's okay, Jennifer gripped her daughter's hand and whispered softly. Mama is here. But Emma's wounds were deep. Being treated as less than human by all her family except her grandmother was too heavy a burden for her young heart. Tears were about to stream down her cheeks. At that moment, Dorothy, who was sitting across the table, gave a small cough. It was a very quiet sound, almost inaudible. However, Jennifer definitely heard it. Her grandmother's eyes were looking at Jennifer meaningfully. Then Dorothy looked down slightly and made a gesture as if pointing to her own chair. Jennifer noticed her grandmother's signal. She was clearly trying to communicate something. However, she needed to act carefully so the other family members wouldn't notice. Excuse me, I dropped my napkin, Jennifer said, pretending it was natural. She slowly stood up from her chair and pretended to pick up a napkin she claimed to have dropped. Then she bent down as if crawling under the table. When she checked under the chair, there was something unbelievable. A small recording device was taped to the chair leg. And looking more carefully, she could see some small device hidden behind the shelf in the corner of the dining room too. It was a camera. Jennifer gasped. Her grandmother had been recording all of this humiliating treatment. Both audio and video, preserved as evidence. What's wrong, Jennifer? Linda asked suspiciously. Oh, nothing, I couldn't find my napkin, Jennifer hurriedly stood up. Dorothy quietly stood up. Jennifer, use my spare napkin. She offered her own napkin to Jennifer. Thank you, Grandma. Jennifer looked into her grandmother's eyes. There she saw deep love and years of accumulated anger. Mother, don't spoil her, Linda interrupted. Linda, Dorothy's voice was stricter than ever before. That's enough. Those words contained all the anger she had silently held while watching. The dignity and authority cultivated over 85 years of life were condensed into those short words. Linda was overwhelmed by her mother's force and lost her words for a moment. Ashley also noticed her grandmother's change and showed an anxious expression. Today is going to be a special Thanksgiving, Dorothy smiled meaningfully. Really, it's going to be a special day. Jennifer was beginning to understand the meaning of her grandmother's words. The years of humiliation and discrimination were finally about to end. As dinner progressed, Dorothy quietly stood up. With a resolute posture, she looked around at everyone in the dining room. Everyone, I have something to discuss. Dorothy's voice was calm, but it contained steel-like strength. Mother, we're eating now, Linda said with displeasure. Please do this later. No, it must be now, Dorothy ignored her daughter's protest. Actually, I have been carefully observing and recording what has been happening in this house for the past few years. Jennifer's heart began beating rapidly. The other relatives looked at each other with confused expressions. Recording? What do you mean, Grandma? Ashley asked anxiously. Dorothy reached behind the shelf and took out a small camera. This? And I also had recording devices placed under the chairs. Not just today. For the past 3 years, at every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and family gathering, I have recorded all the treatment of Jennifer and Emma. Linda's face turned pale. Mother, what are you doing? I am pursuing justice, Dorothy's voice contained unwavering determination. As a former teacher, I watched children for 40 years. I know very well how psychological abuse and discriminatory treatment wound children's hearts. Abuse is such an exaggeration, Ashley hastily protested. We're just doing what's natural as family. Dorothy looked at Ashley with stern eyes. Natural? Is it natural to deny a 10-year-old child a knife and tell her to bite meat with her teeth? Is it natural to call her a savage? The relatives began to murmur. Even they, who had been turning a blind eye until now, began to understand the seriousness of the situation. Moreover, Linda, you have forced only Jennifer and Emma to clean and wash dishes every time, while Ashley does nothing but takes credit. This is clear discrimination. Linda tried to make excuses. Mother, that's a misunderstanding. I treat my daughters equally. Don't lie, Dorothy interrupted. I have all the audio and video evidence. 3 years' worth of detailed records. Jennifer felt tears about to overflow. Her grandmother had been trying to protect them all this time. Someone understood and recorded the pain she had endured alone. Grandma, Emma called out in a small voice. Emma dear, it's okay. You will never be hurt again, Dorothy smiled gently. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Dorothy checked the clock. Right on schedule. Who's coming? Linda asked in a trembling voice. Staff from Child Protective Services and police officers, Dorothy answered calmly. I reported this yesterday along with the evidence. Linda and Ashley's faces turned completely pale. Mother, what have you done? I am protecting my granddaughter, Dorothy's voice contained the strong love of a mother and grandmother. Emma is suffering psychological abuse. And Jennifer has also been suffering harassment from family members since becoming an adult. The front door opened, and a uniformed police officer and a woman in a suit entered. She was a social worker from Child Protective Services. You're Dorothy Wilson, the social worker confirmed. We're here about the matter you called about. Thank you. I have all the evidence prepared, Dorothy handed a small memory card to the police officer. 3 years' worth of audio and video recordings. The police officer received the memory card. These recordings may be used as evidence in court. The relatives were stunned. The Thanksgiving dinner had suddenly become the scene of a legal case. Wait, Linda desperately tried to make excuses. This is a family matter. Outsiders shouldn't interfere. The social worker calmly answered, issues involving child safety and welfare are our jurisdiction. Especially when there is evidence of psychological abuse. The police officer turned to Linda and Ashley. You two will need to be questioned on suspicion of child abuse and causing psychological distress. Abuse, that's ridiculous, Ashley was about to cry. We haven't done anything wrong. Dorothy stood up and took out another envelope. Also, this is a copy of my will. The official one is with my lawyer, but you all need to know about it too. Linda asked with a trembling voice, a will? Yes. This house and all my assets will be inherited by Jennifer and Emma, Dorothy declared clearly. After watching your behavior, I could no longer stand it. Ashley stood up. That's not fair. I'm your daughter too. Not fair? Anger flamed in Dorothy's eyes. You, who have hurt my granddaughter for 3 years straight, are saying it's not fair. The police officer took out his notebook. We'll need to hear the details at the station. Linda and Ashley weren't handcuffed, but they were asked to accompany the officers to the police station. The relatives, overwhelmed by the seriousness of the situation, quickly left the scene. The social worker spoke gently to Jennifer and Emma. "This must have been difficult. But you're safe now. Thanks to Dorothy, you can receive proper protection." Jennifer finally let her tears flow. Years of pain and humiliation, and the relief that justice had finally been served, all rushed over her at once. "Thank you, Grandma," Jennifer embraced her grandmother. "I'm sorry for just watching for so long," tears also welled up in Dorothy's eyes. "But I needed solid evidence to legally stop them." Emma also ran to her grandmother. "Grandma, is it really going to be okay now?" "Yes, Emma dear. You will never suffer again. From now on, let's live as a real family." That night, in the quiet house, Jennifer, Emma, and Dorothy enjoyed a real Thanksgiving dinner. The small table for 3 was the warmest and most loving meal of their lives. 6 months later, Jennifer was watching Emma play happily with friends in her grandmother's garden. As cherry blossom petals danced in the air, her daughter's laughter echoed in the sky. Since that Thanksgiving incident, Emma's expression had become remarkably brighter. The court proceedings moved swiftly. The audio and video evidence Dorothy had collected over 3 years was decisive. Child psychologist testimony revealed the seriousness of the psychological abuse Emma had suffered, and Linda and Ashley were convicted of child abuse. Linda received 1 year of probation, and Ashley was sentenced to 6 months of community service. More importantly, both were prohibited from contact with Emma. Social sanctions were also severe. Their reputation in the local community was ruined, and Linda was forced to resign from charitable organizations she had participated in for years. Ashley's husband filed for divorce, and she also lost custody of her children. The cold stares from neighbors were unbearable, and both eventually had to leave town. "Mama, look. I drew a new picture," Emma ran up showing a colorful drawing. It was a picture of 3 women holding hands and laughing. "This is Mama, me, and Grandma. A picture of our real family. It's very lovely, Emma." Jennifer hugged her daughter. "What did the school counselor say?" "That I'm doing fine now. I don't have bad dreams anymore, and I can play with lots of friends." Emma's eyes shone with hope. After the incident, Emma had been receiving psychological therapy from the school counselor. At first, she often woke up crying in the middle of the night, but gradually her emotional wounds healed. Most importantly, she no longer had to think of herself as worthless. Dorothy appeared from the terrace. "Jennifer, it's tea time." The 3 enjoyed a peaceful afternoon moment in the living room, drinking warm tea. Dorothy remained vigorous at 85, helping with Emma's studies and advising Jennifer about work. "Grandma, thank you so much," Jennifer said with heartfelt gratitude. "Without you, we would probably still be suffering." "I should have acted sooner," Dorothy smiled a little sadly. "But I needed solid evidence. Emotions alone couldn't have legally stopped them." Jennifer's graphic design work was also going well. Being freed from stress had heightened her creative drive, and she was producing even more wonderful work than before. Client evaluations were high, and her income was stable. "Mama, what shall we do for Thanksgiving next year?" Emma asked innocently. "Let's have a real Thanksgiving that we can truly be grateful for, just the 3 of us," Jennifer answered. "As a family that loves and respects each other." Dorothy took Emma's hand. "Emma dear, remember this. A real family isn't just about blood relations. Only with love and respect can you become a true family." "I understand, Grandma," Emma nodded happily. The setting sun beautifully illuminated the house windows. This house was now filled with true love and peace. The pain of the past hadn't completely disappeared, but the bond between the 3 who had overcome it had become stronger and more beautiful than anything else. Linda and Ashley were receiving the consequences of their actions. However, Jennifer and the others chose a positive life rather than revenge. Justice had been achieved, and true family love had triumphed. And this small family would continue to support each other and accumulate happy days ahead. After all, real Thanksgiving continues every day.